Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope that you're doing well and wherever you are. And today is our ninth day of our 21-day challenge of Awaken Your Spiritual Neurons Empire. So I hope that everyone had an opportunity um, to reflect on the questions that we made yesterday in regards to attack your addictive emotions, because, of course, that gives you an opportunity to start creating new habits, which is something that we're going to talk a little bit about today in the sense of trying to understand how our brain is composed so we can create habits based on what is it that our brain is made of. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about also how the learning process um, occurs in the brain, and that's going to give you an idea actually of how you have been learning things and how you're supposed to be learning things from now on. Okay, so based on the process that you are already starting, in order to resignify your mindset, something that it's important to all of us is to be aware of the composition and the structure of the brain. Why? Because that helps us understand also what is it that we um, feed our brain with, right, in order for it to work properly. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about nutrients. We're going to talk about the food that we consume, because that is basically what our brain is, right? Uh, Everything that we have learned so far, we have learned it because of perceptions, memories, but at the same time, because our brain has been operating in such a way, it's been producing certain chemical reactions that originate mostly from the food that we ingest. Okay. And that is because basically the brain is composed of four main sources of energy. Okay. Those are basically water, fats, glucose, and mineral salts. Okay. So here's the thing, even though that the brain is composed of 60% of fat, and that fat is surrounded pretty much by 70% water. Yeah, it also relies on the energy of the sugars or the glucose that we ingest. And not only that, right, in order for the brain to make those electrical connections or those electrical signals to communicate, to make the cells communicate with each other, right, it needs mineral salts, because mineral salts are important not only to produce the electrical signals, but also, to make water, flow around the brain and around our body in such a way that the water can carry those nutrients up to the brain. Now, the interesting thing that I want you to take into account is not only uh, consuming nutrients that are rich, of course, in water or in fatty acids. And when we're talking about fatty acids, we're not talking about just any fat, right? There's a big difference between eating French fries and having olive oil. Okay, there are fats that at the end of the day they're going to be so heavy in our blood system that they can actually make it difficult for nutrients, to go from our gut into the blood system and then go into the brain. So we want to make sure that we are ingesting and we are connecting with uh, oils that are uh, like fatty acids in terms of free saturated fats that are going to make the paper or the role of protecting our brain cells. And this is something that I'm talking in terms of a little bit of the biology, but also for you to have an idea that not all sugars are good, not all fatty acids are good, not every type of water is good, and at the same time, not every excess of mineral salts is good for our body. So everything in a balanced way, it's going to be much more meaningful in terms of what is it that we consume. Now, we have been actually practicing visualization and mentalization. So why not in this process of transformation that we are going through, why not visualizing connecting with the sources of energy that make it possible for our brain to work properly? Okay. So the idea is for you to, of course, breathe, right? Because you're going to bring oxygen to your brain, but at the same time, try to connect with uh, the source of water that you are. And I'm saying this because, as I mentioned before, 70% of your body is water. Okay. Now, when you connect with water or when you visualize that you are consuming water, basically you are connecting with part of not only yourself, you're connecting with part of nature, right? So in some way, you are a part of a whole ecosystem that supports you, right? So it is the same when you connect and you visualize not only that you are ingestion part of that ecosystem for your survival, for your preservation, for your brain function, but at the same time, you are connected somehow to something that is part of this whole universe, this whole living existence. Okay. And here is where we start expanding our ways of imagination, and we start like getting out of our own boxes, right? And we start connecting with something that is around us, the things that we have been gifted in order to be able to exist. And that's what water is. Water, the same as oxygen, is a gift that has been given. A gift, when I'm saying gift, is like something that it is and it exists as a natural resource, right? To do, all sources of biological reactions and chemical reactions in our planet, but at the same time, I mean, it's an important portion for us. We depend on water to live, right? We depend on the water to help us move oxygen, right? Now, it is different when we consume, the faucet water and when we consume water that is being treated. Unfortunately, that's something that has been our fault as human beings, to contaminate a natural resource, something that is essential for us, right? So that's why today we have to invest on water that is less polluted, much more purified, in order to help us, have a better functioning of our body and our brain. Now, the same thing when you connect with glucose, think of the following: glucose is a source of energy, and because it produces electricity and it produces energy, well, when we're talking about um, glucose, basically, we are making reference not only to energy, but we are making reference to cognition. We're making reference to effective brain functioning, because without energy is like the car without the fuel, right? So if you don't put fuel to the car, your engine is simply not gonna move. It's not gonna function. So how do you connect with glucose? How do you connect with sugar at a greater conscious level? Okay, there are sources of um, in nature, let's say, and I put in my book the example of the honey, the bees. If it wasn't because of the bees, all the work that they're doing, transporting and taking actually their particles or doing their job, within sucking the flowers, producing the honey, uh, we wouldn't be able to have the source of energy, and there will simply not be, or there will not be the possibility of flowers passing through a photosynthesis process, right? Same as any other organism. So I want you to, for a minute, try to connect a little bit with the importance of organic sugar for your body, in this case, honey, right? Although you can actually get glucose from fruits as well. Um, but again, what's the relationship that you have with these little animals? And when I ask you about that, of course, the first thing that comes to your mind is, well, I mean, the bee, uh, you know, it's gonna pinch me, right? But that is like their mechanism of defense, as we all humans also have mechanisms of defense. So if we were to compare with the bees, they're doing us a favor. They're doing good to us by producing honey, right? So why should we not be connected to the sense of some sort of creatures who are actually contributing to the production of sugar, of honey, which is important for us, for our energy? Okay. So that's another way that you can start visualizing and connecting with your outside world. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about mineral salts. So, mineral salts are basically found in vegetables, right? In grains, of course. But the idea of mineral salts is precisely to produce electricity in our brain, produce metabolism, and at the same time, it is important for us, not only for bone health, muscle health. It has a very important role in electric conduction. Okay. And electric conduction is what makes light possible. I want you to think on the mineral salts that you connect when you ingest them. Basically, what you're doing is that you're producing enough source of energy to produce light, to produce electricity. You are an electrical being. You are a being of light, same as I am, same as any other human being, and same as creatures, right? We depend on mineral salts to naturally conduct light. Okay, so this is, and it sounds illogical sometimes when people say, well, we are beings of light. So you imagine that we're just like receiving light. But when you connect to the source of light in a biological sense, you start understanding that you are actually light because of the electricity that is being produced through the spinach that you eat, through the broccoli that you ingest. Okay. So why not connecting to the fact that, and accepting, of course, the fact that we are already sources of light, okay, sources of energy. And also, we need, in order to produce that light, I want you to imagine, the light bulb and the process of the light bulb, actually lighting up. It brings electrical conduction, but the electrical conduction, in order to be able to pass through, right, it needs some sort of protective coating. And that's what the fatty acids play an important role when producing electricity. Otherwise, imagine the electrical waves will generate short circuits, and our brain will not be able to function harmonically because it will be producing a series of unorganized short circuits, and we will literally burn in fire. And that's not what our brain is supposed to do, right? uh, I'm telling you this because this is the natural physics law of light, right? When electrons, positive and negative, right, make uh, the wrong connection, right, you're gonna get into a point in which electricity may cause a short circuit, right, in voltage because of the discharge, right, is an energy that, if it's not conducted properly, right, it's going to create other explosive reactions or firing reactions, and this is not what's supposed to happen. So one of the main roles of fatty acids in our brain is precisely to protect or insulate our cells in such a way that electricity can pass without causing any damage because of the liberation of high voltages of energy of electricity. At some point in time, I spoke that our brain is basically able to light a bulb of 20-25 watts. That is why we, at a physical and a biological level, understand that we are human beings made of light, right? And all this that I am actually sharing with you, of course, is something that you are connecting. You are actually mm, making new relationships as to how do you relate in terms of a being, a physical being, in regards to your environment. So the only reason why it's important to do this is because you can start in your mind thinking about what is the environment that you live in, what is the type of food that you ingest to produce energy, right? And at the same time, while you're actually visualizing all this and you're working on learning all these processes, how is your brain assimilating everything that we have spoke in the last series, and how is your brain assimilating what you are actually listening right now? There is a learning process. This is the ability that the brain has to absorb the energy, to absorb the perceptions of everything that you see, that you hear, that you smell, and you taste through your five senses, right? And make possible for your brain to create information that is going to be at some point in time stored in your brain in the form of memories. So nutrients are important to your learning process. Okay. Everything that you have learned, everything that you have experienced in the past has been the product of or the result of an ongoing learning process. Okay. Now, the thing here that I want you to bring to your attention is also uh, how does your learning process has been occurring up until now. Have you learned anything uh, from a stressful environment, or have you been learning from a, let's say, more balanced environment? One of the things that I speak about and that I make a definition on the learning process is that depending on how do you learn things, that also creates some beliefs in your mind, some memories that become repetitive. So, if you, and I'm going to give you an example of myself, when I was a kid, I had to memorize my lessons. And if I didn't memorize word by word, um, I would be spanked. So, because of the memory that I have on learning on a stressful environment, I had a very difficult time, right, absorbing information when I was in college. So I had to like relearn my process because basically what was happening in my brain is that I couldn't absorb the understanding of I was reading, right? Because in my mind, I associated learning with punishment. So this is something that we need to start understanding as to what was the cause of our traumas, what was the cause of our dilemmas or our limiting beliefs, right? We need to try to understand. Remember that yesterday on the method that I explained it to you, which is atacar, there is a portion in which you need to analyze the cause or the origin of your traumas. And that's one of the things that you need to do. You need to learn, you need to discern, right? What caused you to be in the situation or to have the limiting belief that you have today, right? Was it because you learned something or somebody taught you to do something or to be someone in a stressful situation or in a stressful environment? So that is something that you want to connect into that analysis. Remember that I told you that the analysis that you do based on the method that I suggested, right? It's something that it actually takes time. It's not something that you solve from one day to the other one, right? This is an exercise. Every single exercise that you're doing here is something that you do on a gradual basis, on an everyday basis, right? And something that actually helps you to pass through the process, but the process is something that it takes time, okay? So going back again to the learning process, right? If you have been learning of, you have learned experiences in the past that have been stressful, what has happened in your body is that your chemistry, when you're learning, is producing a stressful chemical substances that are making actually other chemical reactions based on what you are eating and what you are absorbing from the nutrients and the food that you ingest, right? But the thing is that our body produces something that is called cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone, right? So when cortisol is mixed with the fatty acids or is mixed with sugar, it creates a specific chemical reaction. Now, if you have been learning, or if a child learned in a very stable and tranquil environment, right, the presence of cortisol and adrenaline at that moment was not that high. So it gave that child the opportunity to learn in more creative ways, right? Ingest its food in a more balanced way. So cortisol wouldn't be part of the chemical reactions that are being produced in the body. So he will probably generate other sources of chemical reactions that are going to impact his body and his mind and his brain in a positive way, right? So those are the things when you pass through the learning process, you need to analyze also how did you learn things, right? And what did you ingest? Because based on those two things, right, you can start having an idea of how your brain has been programmed, how your body has been programmed physically, and then you can actually go after more information. You can actually go and study nutrition, or you can study biology, or you can study medicine, or you can study neuroscience like I did, right? But all this information is basically for you to start getting your brain to work on possibilities that you can use, right, to get out of your present current um, lifestyle or whatever it is that you're passing through, right, to look for solutions, right? And this is something that again you're gonna find whatever makes best sense in what you are listening, what you are learning at this point in time. Now let's talk a little bit about how all this learning process, all the uh, energy that you are relates in terms of energy or electricity. Okay, electrical signals produce in the brain something that is called brain waves. Okay, when we're talking about brain waves, we're talking about basically, the frequencies in which the brain operates depending on our state of being. So we talked about how food, it's not only the source of energy, but also the type of food that we ingest is going to affect our chemistry. And the chemistry that is going to operate in our body is going to have uh, is going to play an important role in the way that electrical signals also behave when they are interchanging information from cell to cell, right, and to from brain to body and to from body to brain. What happens is that everything that is going on in your brain, right, and in your body is being moved because of the source of energy or our inner, let's say, physical light. And that includes our thoughts and our feelings and emotions. Every thought, right, in order to be produced in our mind in the form of a thought, right, it needs not only a chemical reaction, but it also needs an electrical impulse, right, in order for the thought to be elaborated in the mind. You understand? So this is something that it's important for you to understand uh, because you need to also think, okay, so what is the kind of thoughts that I'm having? If I'm having a negative thought, I'm producing, right, a frequency or a state of being that is going to make my brain function on a specific frequency or in a specific brainwave. Now, if I am having a positive thought, right, my brain is actually producing and liberating another type of frequency or another type of brainwave, which is also impacting not only my brain, but at the same time my body, right? And the way in which I behave based on that thought. And the same process actually occurs with our feelings. Our feelings produce thoughts and produce frequencies based on the brain waves that are, let's say, manifested in such a way that they become either very fast frequencies or very slow and steady frequencies. I'm not going to go through the whole process of the brain waves in our body, but what I want you to think is, uh, and try to connect with your feelings and your thoughts also, and try to make a conscious analysis as to how do you usually behave and how do you usually function on a daily routine. Um, are you always operating like under a stressful, very hyper situation, or are you more passive during the day or more tranquil during the day? That will give you an idea of the type of brain wave that you are emitting and that your brain is actually transmitting to the outside world, because that also reflects on, and here's the thing, your thoughts and your feelings through the brainwaves and the frequencies, they emanate those frequencies to the outside world, and they can be actually perceived by the environment. They can be perceived somehow. Of course, they're not going to be visible, but, and they produce waves of energy that people can feel, animals can feel, plants can feel. And in that way, right, you can start making yourself an idea of how do you relate, to your environment, and how do you respond to your environment based on the thoughts that you have, based on the frequency of the feelings that you are producing, right? And of course, the frequency in which the brainwave is going to work, it's going also to depend not only on the type of energy that you're producing because of the thoughts and the feelings, but also because of the nutrients that you're ingesting, right? Because of the quality of the sleep, for instance, that you have, and the quality of life that you have. Again, if you live in a stressful environment, right, what's going to happen is that your body is producing heavy chemical reactions, is uh, emanating electrical signals that are either too accelerated or too passive, and that is generating brain waves that at the same time are generating frequencies that are um, either too accelerated, and that's what you are expressing, right, to the outside of the world. Okay, so this is again, this is just an overall picture of how do you relate biologically and energetically with yourself as a source of light. Again, light in the terms of you're a source of electricity and you're a source of magnetism because of everything that you attract from your frequencies. We're going to talk about electromagnetism later on. Okay, but just for you to have an idea how nutrition is connected to yourself, how learning and the way in which you learn is also part of who you are and how you connect with yourself and with others. How do you relate to your environment? Okay, so This is again an overall picture. This is something that you will understand better, when you get a chance to read my book. If you haven't got a copy of my book, again, at this point in time, this is a draft of a big project that I am building, that I'm producing. Is not fully published. So if you want to qualify to be a better reader and to have the opportunity to have more depth into what I am explaining in these lives, you're more than welcome, right, to get a copy of my book. It's just a matter of getting into my site, www.braininenlightenmentjohan.com, right? All the information is on the lives. All the information, of course, is on the bio of my Instagram channel and in my YouTube channel. So you can actually find your way in, and I hope to hear from you. Okay, so I can send you a copy. Anyhow, that is all for today. What I want you to do today is I want you to connect with your breathing, but at the same time, I want you to contemplate, right, the food that you are eating today. Okay, I want you to pay attention and gain the awareness as to whether you are consuming water, whether you are consuming uh, healthy types of fatty acids, right? So if you have the choice of eating French fries or having um, a nice salad with olive oil, well, it's up to you to choose, right? But I want you to think on the connection that that type of food is going to make uh, in regards to the health of your brain. Okay. And the same thing, I want you to try to connect with the sorts of sugar, right? Would you rather get a fruit, or would you rather get honey, or would you rather eat um, anything else that has sugar, right? Again, think on the impact that whatever it is that you're eating may cause on your brain. This is um, being aware, okay, being constantly connected with what can benefit, right, your transformational process. Okay, remember that transformation is not something that it just occurs and it falls, to your head. Transformational process is all the changes that you are starting to make within and around yourself. And that also includes, right, if you have to change your bad eating habits for good habits, I want you to start thinking about your food. Um, in the terms of learning, for instance, I want you to try to pay attention as to what is it that you're reading. What are you watching? What kind of news or what kind of information you are absorbing that is benefiting your learning process? And also, where are you gathering that learning information? Are you gathering in a very noisy environment, or are you absorbing information in a more tranquil and quiet space? Because that makes a difference in how your body responds to the learning process, right? Your brain is, remember, either you learn on stressful environments and your body responds with chemical reactions like cortisol, or you choose to learn, you choose to read a very interesting book about neuroscience or about the brain in a quiet place in which your brain is able to process information in a more balanced way, or in a such way that you can actually allow your brain to be more creative. Okay, and I also want you to pay attention to your moods, to your responses, to see what kind of frequencies are you emanating, and how are you responding to your environment based on your states of being, of your states of behaving, feeling, and thinking. Okay, Um, when you actually get to read brain waves, right? Again, I mentioned to you, I'm not gonna go into the detail of the brain waves right now. Um, all you need to know by now is that brain waves are the frequencies that in which your brain operates depending on your state of being, and it depends on uh, the food or the nutrients, and depending also on the way that you are actually processing thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Right? If you want to get more fluid in the types of brain waves, right? You can check it out on my book, or you can Google it. The types of brain waves and what each type of brainwave does, in relationship to your brain and your body. Okay. So thank you again for being in this ninth day of our 21-day challenge series. I'll see you on the next one, which is tomorrow at 5:02 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a wonderful, blessed day, and have a very healthy day. Blessings.